Hello guys, and welcome to Simply Vintage Watches, Perpetualize Part 1. Today we are going to talk about the history of the waterproof wristwatch. There's an affirmation on the official Rolex website that reads as such: 1926, the first waterproof watch. In 1926, the creation by Rolex of the first waterproof and dustproof wristwatch marked a major step forward. Given the name Oyster, this watch featured a hermetically sealed case which provided optimal protection for the movement. Having done my research, I decided to write Rolex, but you cannot contact them directly. I contact them through an authorized dealer, just as they asked you to do. This is my email. Hi, I thoroughly read the Rolex official website and was directed to you through them by their frequently asked questions section. How can I contact Rolex? People also ask, how can I find more information on Rolex? Is there an email for Rolex? Is there a phone number for Rolex? Our extensive network of official Rolex retailers would be happy to answer any question you may have regarding the watches and the Rolex brand. My question is regarding the affirmation, 1926, the first waterproof watch. In 1926, the creation by Rolex of the first waterproof and dustproof wristwatch marked a major step forward. Given the name Oyster, this watch featured a hermetically sealed case which provided optimal protection for the movement. End of quote. Research shows that there were at least 2 waterproof wristwatches before the Oyster. That is myself writing. The Submarine by Tavan in 1915 and the Fortis Aquatique in 1917. Both tested, proven, and advertised as such. Therefore, I would like to know what Rolex has to say about that, since you would be happy to answer any questions regarding the watches and the Rolex brand. Thank you. At the end of this video, we're going to review Rolex's answer. Now let's get into the history of the first waterproof wristwatches. We are going to place actual history, historical facts, and counterposition of a statement or affirmation that we presently find on Rolex's official website. While we wait for their email response, which I will read to you at the end of this video, I will briefly talk to you about the history of the first waterproof wristwatches and how they came to be at least 10 years prior to the Oyster case. In December of 1917, at the height of the Great War, the following brief article appeared in the British Horological Institute's Horological Journal. It reports a waterproof wristwatch created at the request of 2 British submarine commanders since 1915. It was explained that that watch had to fulfill certain conditions, number 1 being the most important since they were submarine commanders. It had to be watertight. Number 2, it had to be non-magnetic. Number 3, for variations in temperature, the balance had to be made of an alloy of iron and nickel, which expands and contracts so little. Number 4, the face had to be quite legible at any time. Hence, the submarine watch by Tavan was born. How was the waterproof spec met on this particular watch? The submarine wristwatch is made watertight by having a screw-on back and screw-on bezel, which are both fitted with compressible gaskets to improve their water tightness, and a waterproof compressed gland seal in the stem tube to prevent water entering the case through the hole where the winding stem enters. The next picture shows the means of sealing the winding stem. There is a gland or packing ring in the stem tube which is threaded, secured and compressed by a round brass nut which in its turn is externally threaded and screws into the end of the stem tube, much like the Rolex Oyster, except that the Oyster carries the thread on the outer part of the crown tube. Now, interesting fact, Hans Wilsdorf acquired the patent for a screw-down crown that started his quest for a waterproof watch from Perregaux and Perret. He bought the design, he purchased it, he did not create it. And that is patent number 114948 from October 1925, which he registered under the name of Oyster in July of 1926, as shown by the extract from the Archives de l'Horlogerie shown here. Now notice the advertisement of the Tavan Submarine Commander. It is written in bold letters, waterproof. And we can't go on talking about the submarine without mentioning its precursor, which are watches fitted with a François Borgel case from a patent as early as 1891. Look familiar? Certainly. The Oyster case was inspired by the 1903 Borgel three-piece screw case. The similarities are obvious, and Rolex watches had been made using these Borgel cases, as well as the original Borgel patent screw case. Rolex feeded the different levels that had already been established, the François Borgel dam-proof watch and the completely waterproof submarine wristwatch by Tavan, which we've been considering. Now let's talk about yet another waterproof watch from 2 years later, 1917. The Fortis Aquatique, sold by Harrods in the UK. Here is the case in detail. The figure reproduced from the patent shows cross-sections through the case. The principal waterproof features are that the case has screw back, no front bezel, and gasket seals for the glass and for the winding stem where it enters the case. The most stunning piece of evidence is this 1917 sales advertisement. It clearly says that Harrods tested each watch in water for 14 days before putting it on sale, and that they guaranteed it for 3 years. 14 days of testing its water resistance is certainly a longer period of time than what Mercedes Gleitze wore the Rolex Oyster around her neck for 10 hours during her unfinished channel swim. By Hans Wilsdorf subsequently dedicating a full page to the channel swim on the Daily Mail, he did not create the first waterproof watch, but Rolex did invent the concept of brand ambassadors with this campaign. And now, the long-awaited moment, Rolex's answer to my initial email. Dear sir, thank you for your message. Your email has been received, and one of our representatives will reply to your inquiry within the next 2 working days. Thank you for your patience. Have a great rest of your day. Best regards, the Chateau d'Ivoire team. That was February 2nd. They recontacted me on February 4th. Dear Mister, thank you so much for contacting us at Chateau d'Ivoire and for your interest in watches history. Please allow us some time to review this information and get back to you with the answer. We thank you for your patience. Kind regards, Elia, Chateau d'Ivoire. They only recontacted me yesterday. Dear Mister, thank you so much for your email. We are still reviewing the information you have kindly provided us with and will get back to you shortly. We thank you for your patience. Kind regards, Elia, Chateau d'Ivoire. All we got so far are crickets.
Thanks, Danny. I love Washington.
Excuse me. I didn't dismiss you.
I beg your pardon?
I'm not through with my examination. Sit down.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled to.
You want answers!
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
I hope you really enjoyed this video of Perpetual Lies Part 1. See you next time, guys, on Simply Vintage Watches.